Do you think the inflation numbers are true? Or is inflation going to skyrocket again? And how much inflation protection should you have in your portfolio? Hello, Diamond NestEgg members, super savers, and course fans. I hope you're healthy and well. So, we don't know yet what the implications will be from the fact that just last Friday, the Fed was served with DOJ subpoenas, which threaten a potential criminal investigation around the ongoing renovations of the Fed headquarters in D.C. Was it just the latest turn in the long-running feud between President Trump and Fed Chairman Powell that we've almost gotten used to by now? Or will it develop into something more? Chairman Powell vows to stand firm, but one possible worst-case scenario is the Fed, be it under Powell or his soon-to-be appointed successor, may bow to the pressure from the administration and lower rates faster and steeper than they would otherwise have, which in turn might rekindle inflation as a serious threat for savers. And most of us still remember how painful it was when inflation spiked above 9% not so long ago in June 2022. Some in our community are getting concerned and have been taking a fresh look at inflation proofing their portfolios. So, with that in mind, here are the 3 topics that we'll be covering today. 1. What does history teach us about inflation and its effect on bonds? 2. How much of your bond portfolio should be protected against inflation? And how can you best do that? 3. What are our 2 golden rules for inflation protection? Let's dive in now, folks. What does history teach us about inflation and its effect on bonds? So we can run numbers, see what history has taught us, and try to understand why things might be the same or different this time around. But no one can really see into the future, right? What we do know, though, is that inflation has historically been the worst enemy of most bond investors. As Deutsche Bank has shown in a recent study, in the more than 50 years since 1971, when the Bretton Woods system collapsed, no country has averaged less than 2% inflation. Switzerland at 2.2% comes closer. The U.S. put in a respectable showing with an average annual inflation rate of 3.9%, just about making the exclusive club of the 13 countries with average annual inflation rates of below 4%, alongside Japan, Germany, Singapore, Austria, China, Canada, and a few others. That said, an average 3.9% inflation rate per year is still almost twice the official Fed target, and more than many investments will earn, bringing us nicely to the next section of today's discussion. How much of your bond portfolio should be protected against inflation? And how can you best do that? As we often say in the industry, past performance is not indicative of future results or events. And that's why when it comes to the question of what percentage of inflation versus non-inflation protected bonds an investor should have in their portfolio, we follow the David Swensen approach. David Swensen was Yale University's chief investment officer, overseeing the university's very sizable endowment fund until his death in 2021. According to Swensen, an investor should hold 50% inflation-protected bonds and 50% non-inflation-protected bonds in their fixed income portfolio if the investor doesn't know or doesn't have any expectations for where future inflation might be headed. The idea behind the Swensen rule is simple. If I don't know which way inflation will go, I'll just split my bond assets down the middle between inflation-protected and non-inflation protected, and I'll be right half the time. That'll be probably as good as it gets and should let me sleep as well as possible at night because I don't have all my bond eggs in one basket, so to speak. Let's call investors who fall under this basic 50-50 Swensen rule Group 1. If you really don't have a strong conviction about future inflation, this 50-50 split is probably not a bad default situation, and probably as good a starting point as you can have for developing your personal inflation protection strategy. In our mind, there are at least 2 more groups of investors, though, that can and should modify this basic Swensen rule according to their personal situation. For example, an investor may want to hold less than 50% inflation-protected bonds and more than 50% non-inflation protected bonds in their fixed income portfolio if the investor's overall portfolio has other inflation-proofing assets, such as equities, REITs, investment properties, gold, and commodities, or some other types of alternative investments, and or if the investor's future inflation expectations are lower than the market's future inflation expectations. This here, having other inflation-proofing assets, is the primary reason why Marcus and I have allocated less than 50% of our fixed income portfolio towards inflation-protected bonds. We own a fair bit of equities and also an investment property, the price appreciation of which serves as our inflation protection, and that also pays us a certain income stream from the rent that should generally go up with inflation as well. And I'll have a few more comments about inflation-proof income streams later on. Let's call investors who have a similar profile Group 2. On the other hand, an investor may want to hold more than 50% inflation-protected bonds and less than 50% non-inflation protected bonds in their fixed income portfolio if the investor's overall portfolio has little or no other inflation protection. The same applies if the investor's future inflation expectations are higher than the market's future inflation expectations on average, and or if the investor is already in or close to retirement, say less than 10 years. Let's call this scenario where investors would hold more than 50% of the fixed income part of the portfolio in inflation-protected assets, Group 3. Now, there are 3 key points to keep in mind about inflation-proofing your portfolio. First, Swenson's approach is the most specific one that we could find about inflation-proofing a bond portfolio. And I personally like how it does give a concrete starting position, while also encouraging us to consider our entire portfolio and not just bonds in isolation. There are other strategies and guidelines out there for inflation-proofing a portfolio, but many of these other approaches, such as Ray Dalio's all-weather portfolio or the golden butterfly portfolio, put their faith more in adding gold and maybe other commodities to a diversified portfolio, rather than dealing specifically with a fixed income portfolio and inflation-protected bonds. There's nothing wrong with this, and if you don't trust the official inflation numbers, for example, and think the actual price increases are higher than the headline rate suggests, then adding commodities and other real assets such as properties may indeed be the only effective protection you can get. But do note that while adding gold and or other commodities may protect your asset base against inflation, and gold indeed had a good run since COVID, and especially in 2025, these investment vehicles may not help returns all that much in quieter economic times, and, more importantly, also won't help you with a regular income stream, because as we all know, gold and commodities will generally not pay any interest or dividends. So if you have a portfolio with a large fixed income allocation, and or if you depend on the regular income stream from your bond investments, then the Swenson approach may be the best game in town for you, so to speak. Second, if you've decided that you want to add inflation-protected bonds to your portfolio, and if we exclude foreign inflation-protected bonds and some occasional small domestic issues, your choice is somewhat limited. It's really only TIPS and Ibonds, the 2 types of inflation-protected bonds that the U.S. government issues. For Ibonds, purchases are generally limited to $10,000 per person annually. Plus, they only pay out the accumulated interest when they mature or are redeemed. So if you need to buy more or want regular interest income, Ibonds may only be able to help you just so much. TIPS, on the other hand, may be the better choice for many situations because they aren't really restricted in the quantity that you can get, either via auctions or the secondary market, and they carry regular coupons for interest payments every 6 months. However, TIPS are complicated and can be hard to understand. For example, they only pay out their real interest rate in cash, which will be lower than what a normal treasury bond with an equivalent total return would pay out. And this is because the inflation adjustment is added to the principal of the TIPS and only paid out at maturity. So planning for your portfolio mix and especially your cash flow can be a bit more complex with inflation-protected bonds than with normal non-inflation protected bonds. But it's not impossible if you stay flexible and use tools such as bond laddering for your portfolio. And if you are interested in a deeper discussion on Ibonds, tips, and or other ways to inflation-proof your portfolio, I invite you to come join our brand new VIP member community at the lowest price it will ever be before we officially launch on January 15th. And it's a price that won't go up with inflation. You'll also be joining us just in time for our very first VIP member live of the year, which is happening this coming Sunday, January 18th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time, with highlights of the upcoming 10-year tips and 20-year T-bond auctions. Check out this video here to get an insider look into the content and conversations that are happening in our VIP member community every day, and whether it's something for you. Or visit our website at www.diamondnestegg.com and click on this yellow private VIP member community button to grab your $100 early bird discount before prices go up on January 15th. I've linked everything below this video for your convenience. Now, let's move on to the third point. Other common options for building income streams that protect at least somewhat against inflation include REITs, real estate investment trusts, high dividend stocks such as utilities, and potentially some types of yield-enhanced structured products with underlying equity exposure, such as the Boomer Candy Funds or auto-callable ETFs that we've discussed extensively in our member videos. Keep in mind, though, that none of these options guarantee a payout or are directly linked to inflation. But these are still options that you may want to consider as part of a diversified portfolio. But before you make any decisions, let's talk a bit more about the nature of inflation protection and how you should think about it. Always remember these two golden rules. 1. Inflation protection is like insurance. It may cost you a bit of yield when you buy it, but in the end, you'll be glad you have it if prices really start running amok. And if they don't, well, it's like with any insurance you paid for and didn't need. It usually just means that something bad didn't happen. And 2. Again, just like insurance, you need to get inflation protection in place before the purchase power of your investments has already eroded. Many investors learn this the hard way, and mostly too late, after their nominal treasuries and other bonds had already lost much of their purchase power and value during the post-COVID inflation and the subsequent steep interest rate increases by the Fed. And unfortunately, bonds, unlike stocks, will never recover from a bout of inflation unless the economy enters a similarly strong deflationary phase right after, which has really never happened in living memory. So yes, the right time to add some inflation protection to your portfolio is before it gets worse, not when inflation is already rampant. What this means is that if you're truly concerned about what's happening at the Fed right now, and or you're simply starting to prepare for retirement, now may be a good time to reevaluate your portfolio to determine whether you will need to add some more TIPS, Ibonds, and or other inflation-proofing assets going forward. And if inflation protection, income generation, and capital preservation are top of mind for you, and today's video has whet your appetite, I invite you to come join our brand new VIP member community at the lowest price it will ever be. Remember, if you already understand the fundamentals of bond investing and are reasonably comfortable managing your portfolio yourself, or if you're currently going through our bond courses, our Diamond NestEgg VIP member community is the ideal place for you if 1. You're already in retirement and want to have a forum for an extra pair of eyes for critical questions. 2. You're not yet in retirement, but are actively thinking about it for yourself or a loved one, and want to get ready to take the decisions that lie ahead. 3. You have questions about how a product works and what the benefits and risks may be. 4. You follow the markets and want to be the first to know about safe and or higher yielding investments. 5. You want to understand new offerings and trends and decide whether they might be something for your portfolio. 6. You want to exchange perspectives with a like-minded community of safety-conscious and income-minded investors who do not want to give up on good returns either. And 7. You're a lifelong learner who enjoys discovering hidden investment gems and sharing with others in a more private setting. So, if you check one or more of these boxes, take a look at this video here to get an insider look into the content and conversations that are happening in our VIP member community every day and see whether it's something for you. or visit our website at www.diamondnestegg.com and click on this yellow private VIP member community button to grab your $100 early bird discount before prices increase on January 15th. They will never be this low again. I've linked everything below this video for your convenience. All right, members, super savers, and course fans, I hope you enjoyed today's video and learned something new. And see you again very, very soon with more brand new wealth building content for your financial journey.